Okay, so welcome back to the 10th and final installment here of our Thematics, looking through the various chapters in our Sociology 101 class. And this week we're looking at chapter 10, and this is the chapter on the family. Now, when you think about the family, sometimes you think about the ideal family, and this could be a representation of the family that you get from a classic film or TV show, Leave It to Beaver or something like this. Maybe the ideal family, and the family that doesn't seem to have any form of dysfunction or disorder, any kind of problems or habitual issues to it. For most every person in the world and every society, I think we would agree that all families have a form of dysfunction. And all families are not as peachy keen and ideal on the surface as we may like them to be, as we think they to be, and so forth. So you could look at this particular article. This is like from a counseling site, trying to get people to think about the ideal family. How does your family stack up to the ideal family? And what this particular, I think is a psychotherapist does, he looks at different structures of family. So in this case, he talks about two parents, he talks about a series of children, and he says they're on different levels in his model. That's because there's hierarchy in the family. The parents are on the top, and the kids then have to be, maybe on an equal footing, but if there's sibling rivalry, are they really on an equal footing? I'm not going to share the rest of the article, but the rest of the article basically shows you different models out there, saying that there's not one ideal family. There's not one model of the family. If you go to other cultures, as anthropologists remind us of, you're going to find many types of families out there, many different structures, many different approaches. I think that's the first reflection. Actually, first reflection is to say, yes, there is no ideal family, as I alluded to earlier with family dysfunction and our desire for there to be a perfect ideal family. And second is, there's more diversity to families and relationships in the world than maybe we realize. So that's two important realizations to begin this week's reading with. And here are some key terms we could also think about, or concepts. If we talk about the family and its diversity, or the lack of an ideal family, we might ask how many children exist in a family that you consider to be ideal. Or are there children at all? Maybe marriages like my own, people choose not to have children. Are those people discriminated against? Are those people seen as abnormal because the norm in your particular society is to have children? Second is, what's the nature of a couple? Is a couple two people, or could a couple be three people, as we see in cases of growing polyamory in the United States, or forms of group marriage in the United States, or partner swapping or sharing? This might seem immoral to you, and in fact, many of the issues in this chapter might collide with some of our religious or moral or political expectations of what a family is, but that's the nature of social sciences. We look at the diversity of the world and the fact that there isn't one model of any form that we look at, in this case, the family. There isn't any one form of the family we can speak of. Also, same-sex versus opposite-sex couple. A lot of things have happened in the United States in the last few years that suggest more and more impetus is placed on the idea of the diversity of families and allowing people to have institutional sharing of all the rights that heterosexual people have under the rubric of the government, of the healthcare system, of property and inheritance rights, and so forth. So what is a couple? The next is ideology. You think, well, how does ideology relate to family? Well, specifically, if I'm promoting to you because of my religion or politics an ideal family, and I'm saying the family must look like this, and I need to preserve this form of the family, whatever that is, that's an ideology. That's a way to justify denying certain families or certain types of families rights, opportunities, healthcare, political rights, economic rights, inheritance, and so forth. So ideology and the family go one in one. They have a close relationship. The size of the family. How many kids is appropriate? What if we have resource depletion? Does that mean a society should control the number of children that people have? Is it possible to have a family that's too large for its own good, or for the good of the community or the society? Something else to ponder. And then lastly, what is the purpose of the family? This has changed over time. In the United States, back say 50 years ago or more, the family was there to serve society. Think about how American families grew up on farms, and that had a much different purpose than today, where often people spread out. Families are very mobile. Children often don't live in the same town as their parents in their family in which their family of orientation, the family in which they grew up in. So it suggests to us that the very purpose of the family has changed over time. And as we think about these issues in more depth, we can ask some questions here. Question 1, is it true that forms of inequality begin in the home? If so, what may any of us do about the paradox of the family? And the paradox of this particular chapter begins with the idea that inequality begins in the home. What does that mean, and do you agree with that? That's a good way to frame maybe your discussion for this week of the sociology class. Second, to what extent do we take our own understandings of the family for granted, perhaps limiting our ability to understand the diversity of family forms in the world? These are 2 questions among many other questions we could ask about the family this week. I hope you have this opportunity then to reflect upon this chapter to frame your discussions. And as we move here to the end of the quarter, completing this class, I hope you have good luck finishing up your discussion posts and also working on the final examination. So good luck with the end of the quarter here in your introduction to sociology class.